Last week, I made a video about Super Mario Maker 2 discussing all sorts of details that have yet to be revealed from the 15-minute Nintendo Direct on the topic, and filling in the gaps with my own personal predictions and ideas. If you haven't seen that video, then I do suggest clicking on the card showing up right about now in the top right hand corner, but during that video, I made one major prediction that seemed to go against the masses. The new style, the one, at least, hidden theme. Now to me, the most probable, in fact, practically guaranteed asset style this is Super Mario Galaxy. Now I did briefly try and think of other alternatives for different Mario styles, and though there is some options, there's not nearly as much as Super Mario Galaxy. Apparently, that was wrong. Obviously, I came up with my predictions entirely separately from the general consensus of the internet, so I never really considered the game that most people are expecting for Super Mario Maker 2. See, for most people, their suspicions for that ominous extra game style is Super Mario Bros. 2. It seems pretty obvious in a vacuum, considering the three main styles had to make an effort to jump over it due to its slanted mechanics, and those slanted mechanics are exactly why it fits so well into the other game styles category. Cause you see, Super Mario Bros. 2 was skinned on top of a Japanese game known as Doki Doki Panic. For the first time, you would play as Mario, Luigi, Princess Peach, or Toad, and they each have their own control variations. Mario is the all-rounder character, Luigi can jump higher and lingers for a sec, Peach can float across the air periodically, and Toad can run the fastest, though he has the weakest jump. Now, when first coming up with this prediction, I first slashed the idea of Super Mario Bros. 2 away because of Princess Peach. She is completely unplayable in Super Mario Bros. 2, or at least that's how it seems so far. And though there are now 4 playable characters in Super Mario Maker 2, the one that would seemingly replace Princess Peach is Toadette. Sure, she's another girl, even though the Toads are technically ungendered, but surely she wouldn't have the ability to float, right? I always assumed that it was Princess Peach's dress that allowed her to do it anyway. Plus, one Toad can sprint and the other one floats. It just sounds a little bit jarring. But honestly, this immediate knee-jerk reaction of mine is quite shaky. Of course that could be the case. In fact, just the idea that Toadette is a Toadette and not just a yellow toad like Super Mario Bros. Wii, for example, seems to suggest that that element is a little bit more important. On top of that, we do now have the Super Mario 3D World game style, which just so happens to copy those very same traits from Super Mario Bros. 2. And though we haven't seen any gameplay of 4-player Mario 3D World yet, it sure does seem to line up all too well, right? I originally thought the other game styles category would be for 3D Mario games translated into 2D, but it could very well be games that have these kind of characters with specific player traits. So now I come back to your screens with a slightly more open mind as we talk about just how Super Mario Bros. 2 could work as another game mode within Super Mario Maker 2. And as a basis, I'll be using how Super Mario Maker 2 extracted elements from Super Mario 3D World to shape this speculation video. Seems awfully fitting after all. So let's begin. Because of its category, selecting this style will naturally wipe out the Maker screen back to square one, since many of its elements cannot be traced between different game modes. There's a chance it'll work with 3D World, but I'm doubtful. But now we can place building blocks like those classic hills. Bridges and logs can now be built with different waterfall sections and log layouts to jump across horizontally, and a variant of vines can be placed for vertical adventures. As collectibles, cherries can now be picked up, and collecting 5 of them, or another amount you can adjust, can reward you with a Starman, or perhaps another item of your choosing. And there are no mushrooms to increase your size in this game style, merely a HP energy system, which you can perhaps adjust. Instead of power-ups, you can now plant items 1 square underground for players to pluck and throw, whether it be sprouts, vegetables, a giant turnip, or yet another rendition of the Power Block. If you're feeling generous, you can also place a rocket, which advances players further into the level. Would be interesting if you could direct it to go elsewhere. Or you could place 5 collectible vegetables in the level, which, once all gathered, grant the player access to a stopwatch item that freezes time, helping them along with their quest. Maybe it's mandatory for a rapidly moving element, like a rapid waterfall of logs. And though I said there's no mushrooms, there is in fact the mushroom block, forcing players to use it either as another throwable weapon, or as a stepping stone to their next destination. Level designs can now choose to make enemies stack up, and perhaps it could use the plucking mechanic to move through levels in ways unseen before, like directly down through a tower of enemies below you. But let's talk more enemies, as there are a multitude of new enemies so far unseen in the Super Mario Maker realm of possibilities. For a start, Shy Guys are your classic Goombas, now prevalent as much as you can imagine. There's also the Sniffits, being a bullet-shooting version of the same guy, and each with an alternate colour of the enemy that have varying pacing paths similar to the green and red Koopas. Similarly, the grey Sniffit is there as a stationary defense, leaping up and shooting out. Packs of Tweesters can now be included, attacking players from the air, as well as Bezos dashing horizontally. These types of enemies can also be used as platforms, as you can ride on their backs if you so desire. Ninji's mode of attack is jumping up and down repeatedly. A simple enemy, but sometimes a pain to get past as well. Hoopsters appear on some vines defending their territory, though can also be used to ride as well. Perhaps makers can even plan their trajectory once being ridden. Trouters appear, springing up and down in waters. Again, they can be ridden, but riding too long treats players with a sunken death. Flurries can change with slippery speeds, making players have to use their environment and cliffs if they want to truly defeat it. Bob-ombs aren't new, but being able to accidentally pluck one is an easy enough translation. Pidgeot is potentially one of the more interesting enemies, with its flying carpet being yours to commandeer once you overthrow it. This could open up many more options for level design and discovery. Cobrats like to hide in their environment, such as jars and quicksand, which makers can now place in totally unsuspecting places. And then we've got the Pokies, needing to be shortened down to pass due to their height. As for the tougher enemies, there's plenty of room for the return of Phantom, attacking players whenever they are holding a key to some next area. Porcupo, who cannot be ridden, perfect for a pit trap of some kind. Spark flying around with an area of effect zap. Panzer spitting out fiery flares. Ostro being ridden by a Shy Guy for a seriously speedy enemy. An Auto Bomb that can be used for more riding over certain terrain. And finally, Albatross, dropping bombs from above and flying wherever it pleases when being ridden. In general, there's not a million enemies to go with, and they're all fairly easy to translate over, making me think that bringing all of them over makes a lot of easy sense. And on elements like increasing size, making them stack each other and being the platforms for certain parts, I can see a lot of standard uses for them. As for bosses, practically none have been seen in a long time. Birdo, as iconic as they are, can finally return as an enemy. Take away their eggs and give them other attacks to spit out. Give them wings or a parachute to mess with the trajectory, or have them stack on top of 10 Shy Guys to make an extra hazard of reaching items onto them. Mouser comes in throwing out bombs, somewhat similar to Bowser Jr., and can be taken out with bombs in an explosion too. Sounds pretty easy to translate, though perhaps other items can be effectively thrown about too. Fry Guys float above the player, spitting fireballs and can be squashed out by mushroom blocks. This seems like one of the biggest potentials for a serious hazard due to their constant barrage of fire. Triclide similarly uses mushroom blocks to be defeated while spitting fire. Assuming weaponry can be swapped out, there's ever more options to play around with. A tower of mushroom blocks is usually suggested against this guy, so who knows how that can be redone. Clawgrit comes up throwing boulders at you and into a pit. The boulder bouncing mechanic is also something that can be manipulated in the Mario Maker mode. Hawkmouth can then also be the final surprising challenge that can be placed as a simple door or a trap depending on what the maker decides. It'll act as a boss that the player must dodge through the air and chuck more mushroom blocks at. This is the perfect scenario for makers that like to trick their players. It's a fairly simple one. And finally, Wart, the final boss of Super Mario Bros. 2. Though he has appeared in Link's Awakening and that new remake of the game, we will now be finally seeing an official return of the character as he spits bubbles out at you. He can only be defeated by throwing veg into his mouth, which makes for all the more cruelty if there are no vegetables at hand. Ouch. And that concludes, at the very least, the plethora of enemies that the Super Mario Bros. 2 game style could bring. But there's more to include, of course there is. Along with each character having different controlling stats, there's also new moves that have yet to be explored in the other styles. Every character can crouch as per usual, but when doing so in this style, there's also a flash of a white colour. Timing a jump with that flash then allows players to do the super squat, giving them a charged up, boosted jump. Better for more vertical leaps. And then there's the whole subspace mechanic. In any given level, players can dig up a potion, which do not heal up the player's energy. Instead, it can be placed to create a door into the subspace world, a dark mirrored version of the current lands. In this realm, players can dig up a multitude of new items like coins, which contribute to a bonus level, or hidden mushrooms that can power up the player. What's particularly interesting is, in these lands, the camera doesn't scroll, meaning players must pick and choose exactly where to place the subspace potion in order to collect the best items. This, of all things, seems to have the most gravity in the Super Mario Maker design. Having items hidden in the subspace or using certain elements within this realm can open up a slower paced but more puzzle-centric level design for players to have to hunt around to complete. Of course, the other major element I have yet to mention is doors. Doors are ever prevalent in Super Mario Bros. 2, though they also appear in the other game styles as well. Would they work much the same way as they do here, or perhaps is there more diverse controls due to their heavier emphasis? And we've only just scratched the surface when it comes to the terrain of Super Mario Bros. 2. Obviously, we talked a little bit about a few of the elements from the beginning of the video, but there's other new mechanics that they've also added to the terrain that could have a lot of impact on the Maker levels. For example, jars act as the new pipes to a degree, and you can actually go inside the jars and see a mini closed-off jar-like area. Can you change the shape of these jars, or what kind of challenges are in it? There's also things like quicksand, or at least sand that is going down, which does appear in other Mario games, but I don't think we've seen it quite as a mechanic in Super Mario Maker, where as it goes further down, you can then jump to go up in through the sand. There's also those big old sand pits that we've seen in the gameplay of this video already, acting kind of like that whole dig dug mechanic where you have to dig down to get through the level. Another really big one that we have seen is while Mario Maker 2 has now added the fact that some levels don't scroll sideways, what Super Mario Bros. 2 can do is have it so that those unscrolling terrains and vertical levels can loop, whereas if you go off to the right side of the screen, you'll end up on the left. This could open up a multitude of different levels, if not just Pac-Man inspired levels instead. I can see a lot of opportunities with creating weird puzzles that have you going back and forth between the wall to make it. Another thing is another way that Super Mario Bros. 2 likes to scroll sometimes, and that is if it's not a continuous horizontal movement, it's jarred vertical ones, kind of like Mega Man or just general old school games. This allows for opportunities like falling spike pits, where you have to specifically fall in a certain direction to get through the level. It's very quick in design, but it could be very, very effective. Another thing I kind of want to mention is something about the Birdo, and I suggested that they could shoot something else, but there are actual other variants of Birdo. There are different colors and they each have different things. Some of them can spit fire, or they shoot their eggs at different time rates and trajectories, maybe with 3 at once. Be interesting to see if they extend that and have Birdo in all sorts of different colors, kind of like how Yoshi can have different colors. And as an overall thing, the different themes mostly translate quite well into this game. Obviously, the ground theme is just like the beginning of the game, having that general ground look. There are many underground regions that have all sorts of different aesthetic designs. Underwater, though, is a bit of a problem, because you can't swim in Super Mario Bros. 2. Maybe the closest we'll get are waterfall levels, or maybe whales. It's a new terrain that we haven't seen in anything else, and it does allow for extra mini mechanics like the geysers shooting you up. As for the castle, there are certain brickly castle-shaped zones, or just metallic interiors that they could play with. Sky is very obvious, since there's plenty of levels that are just cloud platforms and vines. Forest, I don't think exists. That'd be something completely replacing that one. Ice is pretty easy, there's lots of slippery lands, but maybe an upgrade on the background could be needed. The desert world is also very easy, since there is literally a desert-themed world. The ghost house isn't per se existing in Super Mario Bros. 2, but maybe it can have a kind of Phanto-styled house, where there's a bunch of masks on the walls, and it's like a creepy, you don't know if they're going to attack you kind of sense. Airships also don't appear in Super Mario Bros. 2 as far as I'm aware, but there is kind of a night theme for a few of these areas where we do see there is a black background. Or maybe one of the night effects in Super Mario Bros. 2 could be that the night brings the subspace silhouette style of the level. It's an interesting idea, but it's surprising to see just how many extra little tweaks Super Mario Bros. 2 does have to the normal Super Mario Bros. Formula. There's a chance that they'll take absolutely all of these different mechanics, aesthetics, and design ideas, since there's only so many because it's such a small game, or maybe they'll only choose a handful, choosing the very best of the game. Either way, looking at the Super Mario Bros. 2 genre as a whole, there are a whole lot of differences to the normal Mario formula. Each character has different stats, enemies can be ridden and thrown, there are few power-ups, merely items to throw, and the gimmick of the subspace and doorways to progress is awfully un-Mario-like. But there is room for a lot of possibility, having makers control what is hidden where, which obstacles they must overcome, and what unique hurdles they must maneuver over. Maybe someone will make a room entirely out of mushroom blocks that the player has to dig through. Maybe there's a level entirely controlled by flying carpets. Or maybe the true final boss is a giant Birdo stacked on 20 Sniffits. Whatever the realm of possibility, whether it is just encapsulated with the gimmicks to the game style, or if it integrates other mechanics like tracks, slopes, snake blocks, and sounds, there's certainly yet to be many options for players that we have yet to witness. However, As I look through all these opportunities for a Super Mario Bros. 2 game style for Super Mario Maker 2, I must admit, it's not gigantic. Sure, I've been talking about this for a while now, but compared to 3D World, there's not quite as much to add. There's no crazy new elements like clear pipes or Koopa Troopa cars, and that's mostly because Super Mario Bros. 2 is an admittedly small game. It was only for the NES. Options were quite limited. Now sure, that doesn't set in stone that this game is not going to appear just because there's less to play with. Obviously, a lot of elements do seem to line up and suggest that this game is next in the to-be-revealed series, but I'm not entirely convinced, or at least not as convinced as most people. When I consider that there is one extra slot for game styles, my first thought doesn't go to Super Mario Bros. 2. It still ends up going to Super Mario Galaxy. And though some are skeptical about how well it could translate into 2D, I still think that this would be the far superior option to go with. And if Nintendo truly does have one more game style to reveal, I will still go ahead and guess Galaxy as the one true pick. After all, if this slot is awaiting an E3 reveal, then surely a Galaxy reveal would get more people riled up than a Super Mario Bros. 2 one, right? Maybe not, but that's what I would have always thought. Unless it's not. Though it's never a good idea to over-expect something from Nintendo, there's always a deep dark possibility that Super Mario Bros. 2 will make it in. And so will Super Mario Galaxy. I mean, I know that this menu has never explored further down than this point, but there's always the chance that, as one last surprise, it will. Or maybe it scrolls over to another page. Maybe only one will be slotted in for now, but a future DLC option down the line opens up for yet another game style to be placed into a new slot. It's a stretch to think of, but it could potentially throw us all off guard and satisfy us all the more. I guess we'll have to find out soon. Or maybe Nintendo will just say screw it and go for this crazy Paper Mario idea that I found on Twitter. This is an amazing concept and I kinda wanna make a video on this style. Maybe next week. So tell me, what are your thoughts? Do you have any extra bodacious ideas for a Super Mario Bros. 2 themed maker level? Is there more that can be explored that I haven't already covered? And do you think this style will be the one in that final slot? Or do you think Galaxy takes the cake? Or Paper Mario? Or I don't know, Donkey Kong? I would love to hear your thoughts down below, and if someone has something that especially catches my eye, maybe I'll make another follow-up video on even more Super Mario Maker 2. Also, I do apologize for my mic occasionally blipping out and skipping ahead. I keep rewiring it, but it just keeps on saying that I'm not talking at certain areas and skipping over. What a pain. But that is all I have to say for now. I look forward to seeing your comments down below. My name's been Daz. You didn't really care, and I'll see you in a bit. And by that I mean Monday, but you probably knew that already.